The marker fumes still burn in her nostrils 17 years later. Every time Hazel Blackwood passes a Sharpie display at Target. She's 16 again, zip-tied to that chair, watching 5 boys decide which parts of her skin would make the best canvas. It started with a sunrise. Hazel had learned long ago that 4:30 in the morning was the safest time at Preston Preparatory Academy. No one was awake to remind her she didn't belong. No one to eye her second-hand uniform or whisper about the scholarship girl who lived in the smallest dorm room, the one that used to be a supply closet. She climbed the maintenance ladder to the science building roof, her camera bag bouncing against her hip. The time-lapse project wasn't due for 3 weeks. But Hazel had discovered that being on the roof at dawn made her feel something she couldn't name. Maybe it was the way the Berkshire Mountains emerged from darkness like promises. Maybe it was how the morning light hit the manicured lawns and made even this cold place look warm. She was adjusting her telephoto lens when she saw them. If you're feeling that rush of what's going to happen next, hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these stories. And if you want to share where you're watching from, drop it in the comments below. For those who want to support more stories like this one, there's a thanks button right under this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps me bring you more inspiring tales of courage and standing up for what's right. Thank you for being here. Now, let's see what happens when push comes to shove. 50 yards away, behind the chapel, 2 figures exchanged something in the bluish pre-dawn light. Through her viewfinder, she recognized Jackson Sterling immediately. That practiced swagger was unmistakable even at a distance. The other was Mitchell Zhao, the SAT proctor who drove a Tesla despite a teacher's salary. Hazel's finger moved to the shutter button by instinct. She'd been documenting Preston life all year, candid moments for the yearbook nobody knew she was creating. The real yearbook. The one that showed Brooklyn Winters crying in the bathroom after her father's insider trading arrest. The one with Kai Nakamura passed out in the computer lab at 3 a.m. Empty Adderall bottles scattered like accusations. But this was different. Through the lens, she watched Jackson hand Mitchell a thick envelope. Mitchell pulled out what looked like test booklets, fanning them like playing cards. Then came the cash, more than Hazel had ever seen in one place. She pressed the shutter. The flash fired. In that frozen moment, Hazel realized 3 things her flash had been on from last night's indoor shots. Jackson Sterling was looking directly at her camera, and she had just photographed the end of her time at Preston. Delete them. Jackson had cornered her after AP Chemistry, his water polo teammates forming a casual wall behind him. Up close, he smelled like expensive cologne and chlorine, a combination that would forever make her sick. Delete what? Hazel kept her voice steady, though her hands shook as she gripped her textbooks. Don't play dumb. It doesn't suit you. He smiled, the kind of smile she imagined sharks made before feeding. I know you have photos. The security footage shows you on the roof with that ancient camera. Very artistic. Very misguided. Madison Chen and Trinity Nguyen passed by, their designer heels clicking on marble. They glanced at Hazel, then quickly looked away. At Preston. You learned early not to witness what Jackson Sterling did to people. I already deleted them. Hazel lied. Show me. I reformatted the memory card. Jackson studied her for a long moment. His eyes were the pale blue of frozen lakes, and just as cold. You know what I love about scholarship students? You think you're so smart, so moral, so special. He leaned closer. But you're just tourists here. And tourist season is ending. One of his teammates, Cooper something, she never learned his last name, laughed. It sounded practiced, like he'd been waiting for his cue. I need a favor, Jackson continued, his tone shifting to something almost friendly. I need someone with your background to write me a recommendation letter. You know, from the perspective of the less fortunate. How I've helped you adjust to Preston. How I've been a mentor. I won't. Friday night, 7 p.m., the old projection room in Humanities. We'll discuss the details. He straightened his tie silk. Probably worth more than her laptop. Unless you'd prefer I tell Dean Whitman about your little photography project, I'm sure he'd be interested to know you've been stalking students, taking pictures without consent. Very predatory behavior. The wall of boys parted, and Jackson walked away. Cooper bumped her shoulder as he passed, hard enough to send her books scattering, as Hazel knelt to gather her things. She noticed other students watching from doorways and corners. Their expressions weren't sympathetic. They were relieved. It wasn't them. Not this time. The projection room smelled like dust and decades of forgotten films. Hazel pushed open the door at exactly 7 p.m., her phone recording in her jacket pocket. Whatever Jackson wanted, she'd have proof. Punctual. I appreciate that. The voice came from the shadows. As her eyes adjusted, she saw them 5 boys arranged like a tribunal. Jackson in the center, naturally. Cooper to his left. 3 others she recognized from water polo team photos. Athletes who'd never spoken to her, but whose names appeared in the local papers every week. Sit. Jackson gestured to a chair in the middle of the room. It was bolted to the floor. I'll stand. I wasn't asking. Something in his voice made her legs move before her brain could object. The chair was old, wooden, with armrests worn smooth by countless hands. As she sat, she noticed marks on the wood scratches that looked deliberate. Tally marks, maybe, or something else. You know what your problem is? Hazel, Jackson pulled something from his backpack. You don't understand your place in the ecosystem. The zip ties appeared so fast she didn't have time to react. Cooper grabbed her left wrist. Another boy, her right. The plastic bit into her skin as they secured her arms to the chair. What are you? Her voice cracked. This is insane. Let me go. Insane? Jackson tested the ties, satisfied with their work. No, this is tradition. Preston has maintained its reputation for 137 years. You know how by removing threats to that reputation. He produced a black marker industrial grade, the kind used for permanent marking on construction sites. The chemical smell hit her immediately. Every year, someone thinks they're special. Someone thinks they can change things, document things, expose things. He uncapped the marker with theatrical precision. We've gotten very good at changing their minds. Please. The word escaped before she could stop it. She hated how small it sounded. Please. Jackson knelt beside her, marker poised. Did you say please when you aimed your camera at me? When you tried to destroy my future? I wasn't trying to. MIT doesn't accept cheaters, Hazel. My father's company doesn't pass to cheaters. You pointed that camera and tried to take everything from me. His voice dropped to a whisper. So now I'm going to take something from you. First, the first mark was on her forearm. The marker moved in precise patterns, squares within squares. Dots arranged in specific formations. It took her a moment to realize what he was drawing. QR codes. Kai here is a genius, Jackson said conversationally as he worked. Full ride to Stanford next year. Coded his first app at 12. Tell her what you made for us. Kai. In the corner, a thin boy with trembling hands looked up from his laptop. His pupils were dilated, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool room. "I don't... Jackson, please. I did what you asked. Can I go? Tell her, or Cooper breaks your laptop. Again." Kai's voice was barely audible. "It's a redirect system. Each QR code leads to a different site. Different content." Content. Jackson finished the first code and moved to her other arm. Such a clinical word. Should we be more specific? Should we tell her about the videos, the deepfakes? Amazing what AI can do these days. Put any face on any body. Make anyone do anything. Hazel's stomach lurched. "You're sick." "I'm practical. You disappear. Questions get asked. But if you leave voluntarily, if you're so humiliated you can't show your face, that's just another scholarship kid who couldn't handle Preston." He drew a second code on her upper arm, then moved behind her. She felt him push her hair aside, the marker cold against her neck. The beautiful thing about these markers, they're designed for industrial use. Weather-resistant, chemical-resistant. Even laser removal leaves shadows. His breath was hot against her ear. "You'll carry these forever, and anyone with a phone can see exactly what kind of girl you really are." One of the boys she didn't see, which laughed. "Remember that sophomore last year? She transferred in 2 days." 3 days, Cooper corrected, but she was weak. "Hazel's tougher, aren't you?" "Hazel." She tried to answer, but her throat had closed. All she could think about was every job interview, every date, every future moment when someone might notice the strange marks and pull out their phone. Jackson moved to her ankles, pushing up her jeans to draw more codes. 12 total, like the apostles. Each one leads somewhere special. Some are videos. Some are forum posts with your information. Some are, well, let's keep some mystery. Through her terror, Hazel noticed something. The way she was positioned. She could see the underside of the armrest. There were words carved there, dozens of them, overlapping like desperate prayers. "Not my fault. Please forget. I'm sorry. Make it stop." How many others had sat in this chair? "You're wondering about the history," Jackson said, following her gaze. 23 in the last 5 years. My brother started the QR tradition when he was here. Much more elegant than the old methods. No violence, no evidence, just devastating effectiveness. He finished the last code on her collarbone, visible even with a modest neckline. There, a masterpiece. Kai closed his laptop with shaking hands. "It's done. They're all live. Excellent. You can go." Kai scrambled for the door, pausing only to look back at Hazel. In his eyes, she saw something that might have been apology, or maybe just relief that it wasn't him in the chair. "Now," Jackson said, packing up his supplies with methodical care. "Here's what happens next. You're going to sit here and think about your choices. In the morning, maintenance will find you. You'll make up some story about a prank. You'll go back to your closet room and discover what those codes reveal. And then you'll do the smart thing. You'll leave Preston. Quietly. Gratefully. And if I don't?" He smiled that shark smile again. "Then everyone will know exactly what kind of photos you really like to take. What kind of things you do for scholarship money. What kind of girl hides behind a camera because she's too damaged for real relationships." They filed out one by one, Cooper pausing to pat her head like she was a dog. "Welcome to Preston tradition," he said. The door closed. The darkness was complete. Hazel sat in that chair, wrists burning where the zip ties cut circulation, and did something that would have surprised them. She smiled. Because Jackson Sterling had made two critical mistakes. First, he'd assumed she was just another scared scholarship kid who would crumble under pressure. Second, he'd never asked about her grandmother. Ethel Blackwood had been a lot of things: traveling circus performer, lockpicker, escape artist, single mother of 5. She'd also been the only person who'd ever loved Hazel without conditions, before the cancer took her. She'd taught her granddaughter everything she knew. "Locks are just puzzles," she'd say, guiding 7-year-old Hazel's fingers. "And puzzles are meant to be solved." Now, the zip ties took 40 minutes, not because they were difficult, but because Hazel had to work by feel, dislocating her thumb the way Grandma Ethel had taught her, using the chair's own bolts to create friction against the plastic. But she didn't run when she got free. Instead, she pulled out her phone, its recording still running, and photographed everything. The chair, the tally marks, the desperate carved words of previous victims, her own marked skin in the mirror of her phone screen. Then she went to Kai's room. She found him on his dorm floor, foam at his mouth, empty pill bottle just out of reach. His laptop was open beside him. Showing code, she recognized a suicide note formatted as a confession. How Jackson had forced him to create the deepfake system. How many victims there had been. How he couldn't live with what he'd done. Hazel dropped to her knees, checking his pulse. Weak, but there. She called 911, gave them the information, then did something that would change everything. She copied his files, all of them. Sometimes it's becoming the reason no one else has to sit in that chair. Hazel opened Kai's laptop one more time, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She had administrative access now. She could see every code, every redirect, every carefully crafted degradation. And she could change them, all of them. The boys at Preston Preparatory Academy were about to learn what Grandma Ethel had always said. The thing about traps, sweetheart, is they work both ways. You just have to know which side you're on. As the sun rose over the Berkshire Mountains, Hazel Blackwood began to type. She had work to do, and promises to keep. 3 days passed before Hazel looked at her own arms in daylight. She'd worn long sleeves since leaving the hospital, even to shower standing under the water with her father's old army jacket on, letting it soak through rather than seeing what Jackson had drawn on her skin. But on Tuesday morning, alone in her closet-sized dorm room, she finally rolled up her sleeves. The QR codes were darker than she'd expected. 12 perfect squares, each one a gateway to manufactured shame. Her phone camera automatically recognized them, eager to scan, to reveal whatever digital hell Jackson had crafted. She picked up her phone, then set it down. Not yet. First, she had work to finish. The past 72 hours had been a masterclass in silent warfare, while Jackson and his crew celebrated their latest removal, while Preston's manicured lawns saw another April morning, while her absence from classes was noted with satisfaction. Hazel had been rewriting their entire system from the inside. Kai's hospital confession had given her more than admin access. It had given her the architecture of the Triangle Society's empire. 240 active QR codes targeting current and former students. A cryptocurrency wallet with 3.7 million in Bitcoin. A client list that read like a who's who of East Coast privilege. And most damning, a shared drive labeled insurance. Every member of the Triangle Society, it seemed, believed in mutual assured destruction. They'd recorded each other committing crimes, hazing, assault, fraud, as protection against betrayal. Jackson himself featured in dozens of videos, including one where he explained the QR system to new recruits while forcibly marking a crying freshman. Hazel copied everything to multiple encrypted drives, but she wasn't ready to release it. Not yet, because she'd learned something else from those files, something that changed everything. She wasn't the first to try fighting back. 3 years ago, a girl named Rebecca Chen had gathered evidence against the triangle. She'd gone to the administration, the police, even the FBI, within a week. Her deepfakes were everywhere. Within 2 weeks, she was dead. Suicide, the papers said. The grief-stricken father, a federal judge, had believed it. The triangle didn't just humiliate. When threatened, they destroyed. So Hazel had to be smarter. She had to make them destroy themselves. "You look tired." The voice made her jump. In her doorway stood Sloane McCarthy, the new academic advisor who'd started in January. Young for faculty, maybe 28, with the kind of purposeful energy that suggested she'd rather be somewhere else. "I'm fine," Hazel said, tugging her sleeves down. "No, you're not." Sloane stepped inside uninvited, closing the door behind her. "You haven't been to class in 3 days. You missed your appointment with me. And unless I'm mistaken, those are the same clothes you wore to the hospital Saturday night." Hazel's heart hammered. "How did you know about the hospital?" Sloane sat on the narrow bed, her expression unreadable. "Because I've been watching you." "Hazel, actually, I've been watching several students, but you just became my priority." "I don't understand." Sloane pulled out her phone, showing Hazel a photo. It was the projection room chair, taken from an angle that showed all the carved messages underneath. "I found this yesterday. Maintenance reported the zip ties, the marker smell. They thought it was a prank." She swiped to another photo security footage of 5 boys leaving Humanities Building Friday night. "But I know better." Hazel said nothing. "At Preston, even allies could be traps." 23 victims in 5 years, Sloane continued. "That's just the ones who left marks on that chair. We suspect there are dozens more. Rebecca Chen was my roommate at Georgetown." And the name hit Hazel like ice water. "You knew Rebecca." "I loved Rebecca." Sloane's voice cracked slightly. "We were going to start a nonprofit together after graduation. Change the world. Expose corruption. All those idealistic dreams." She looked directly at Hazel. "She sent me everything before she died. The evidence, the threats, the deep fakes that destroyed her. I've spent 3 years trying to get justice." "You're not really an advisor." "No, I'm FBI, Cybercrimes Division, undercover for 4 months." Sloane leaned forward. "And you just did something none of the other victims managed. You survived the chair and didn't run. So I need to know, what are you planning?" Hazel could have lied, should have lied. But something in Sloane's eyes, the same grief she'd seen in her own mirror after Grandma Ethel died, made her tell the truth. "I'm going to destroy them. All of them. But not the way you think." She showed Sloane everything. The redirected codes, the copied files, the cryptocurrency trail she'd been following, the client list that included state senators, federal judges, Fortune 500 CEOs. "My God," Sloane whispered. "This is so much bigger than we thought." "That's the problem," Hazel said. "It's too big. You arrest Jackson. 10 more take his place. You expose the clients. They claim deep-fake defense. The whole thing collapses. And the triangle just rebuilds somewhere else." "So what do you suggest?" Hazel smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We make them expose themselves, publicly, proudly, in a way they can't deny or escape. She explained her plan. Sloane's expression went from skeptical to shocked to something like awe. That's insane. So is marking girls like cattle. So is driving them to suicide. So is building a criminal empire on the backs of scholarship kids who just wanted an education. Sloane was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What do you need from me?" "Time. Keep the Bureau back until Founders' Day. Let me position all the pieces. Founders' Day is in 4 days. I know. If this goes wrong, if they realize what you're doing, they'll do to me what they did to Rebecca." Hazel met her eyes steadily. "I know that too." Sloane stood to leave, then paused. "The QR codes on your skin. What do they actually lead to?" "I haven't looked." "Why not?" Hazel thought about it. "Because once I know what they tried to make me, I might lose my nerve, and I can't afford that. Not yet." After Sloane left, Hazel returned to her work. She had programs to write, videos to edit, and a special project to complete. Her art teacher had been emailing about her missing time-lapse assignment. She'd have it soon enough, just not the sunrise they were expecting. Wednesday night, Kai was released from the hospital. Hazel waited outside his dorm, watching him shuffle up the path. He looked smaller somehow, like guilt had physically diminished him. When he saw her, he stopped. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want to. Jackson said he'd release my sister's photos if I didn't help. She's only 15. She made one mistake at a party, and he—" "I know." Hazel had found those files too, the Triangle's leverage on their tech support. "I deleted them, all of them. Your sister is safe." Kai's legs gave out. He sat hard on the walkway, sobbing. "I wrote code that hurt so many people. I can't. How do I live with that?" Hazel knelt beside him. In another life, they might have been friends. 2 scholarship kids who understood that Preston's ivory towers were built on their backs. "You live with it by fixing it," she said. "I need one more thing from you." "Anything." "The master authentication keys, the ones that let Triangle members verify their own codes, still work." Kai looked up sharply. "If you have those, you could change everything at once, without anyone knowing until it's too late. They'll kill us both." "Maybe." Azel helped him stand. "Or maybe we kill the Triangle first." That night, Kai gave her everything. Master keys, backdoor access, even the nuclear option, a kill switch that would delete the entire system if triggered. He also told her about Founders' Day. "It's their victory celebration," he explained, hands shaking as he typed. "They display photos of all their victories, every kid they've marked. Driven out. Destroyed. Jackson streams it to alumni members. Hundreds of them, all watching, all celebrating their tradition. Where? The old observatory. Midnight ceremony. Just like when the society was founded in 1892. Hazel memorized every detail. The more she learned, the more perfect her plan became. Because the Triangle Society was about to learn what happened when you gave someone nothing left to lose. Thursday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Chase, Sterling Jackson's father, stood outside her door in a suit that cost more than most cars. He looked like an older version of his son, with the same cold eyes and shark smile. "Miss Blackwood, may I come in?" It wasn't really a question. Power like his didn't ask, it announced. I understand there was an incident last week, he said, examining her cramped room with undisguised disdain. My son can be overzealous in protecting family interests. Is that what you call it? Chase's smile widened. I call it tradition. My father marked his first scholarship student in 1963. Different methods, then scarlet paint. Usually, but same principle. Preston belongs to certain families. Others are merely temporary. He pulled out a checkbook, actual paper checks, because men like him enjoyed the theater of old money. How much to make you disappear quietly? 50,000, 100. Name your price. I don't want money. Everyone wants money, Miss Blackwood, especially orphans with no safety net. He wrote a number, tore off the check, set it on her desk. So, $250,000. Take it. Leave tonight. Start fresh somewhere that suits you better. Community college, perhaps. Hazel looked at the check. $250,000. Enough to change everything. Enough to run. No, Chase's expression hardened. That's unfortunate, because the alternative is so much worse than whatever my son did. I own judges, Miss Blackwood, police commissioners, federal prosecutors. I could have you arrested right now for theft of digital property. Kai's little confession mentions your unauthorized access. Try it. He studied her for a long moment. You know, you remind me of someone, a girl from my year, Rebecca something. Also thought she could fight the system. He stood, straightening his perfect suit. They found her in the Charles River. Tragic how depression affects the ambitious poor. The threat hung in the air like poison. Get out, Hazel said quietly. Consider my offer. Miss Blackwood, it expires at midnight tomorrow. After that, he shrugged. Well, the river is still cold this time of year. After he left, Hazel sat on her bed, shaking. Not from fear, from rage. They'd killed Rebecca. Admitted it. Casually, like discussing weather. She picked up her phone and texted Sloan. He just confessed to murder. The response was immediate. Recording. No, but it doesn't matter. Tomorrow night, we get them all. Friday arrived like a held breath. Hazel attended classes for the first time all week. Sleeves down, head high. Whispers followed her through hallways. Some students pointed at her covered arms. Smartphones ready. They all wanted to see what the QR codes revealed. The story had spread another scholarship kid marked and broken. In AP Literature, Madison Chen tried to sit next to her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I wanted to help, but you were scared, Hazel finished. I get it. My cousin was here 3 years ago. Rebecca. Maybe you heard about her. Hazel's breath caught. Rebecca Chen was your cousin. They did the same thing to her. The codes, the chair. But she fought back, and Madison's voice broke. I've been carrying her phone since she died. Everything she gathered is still on it. I just never knew what to do with it. By lunch, Hazel had Rebecca's files too, the final piece she needed. That afternoon, she submitted her art project, a time-lapse video titled Dawn at Preston. Her teacher would be surprised when she opened it Monday. But by then, it wouldn't matter. As darkness fell, Hazel prepared for war. She dressed carefully. Black jeans, black hoodie. Her grandmother's lock-picking tools in one pocket, 3 USB drives in another. On her laptop, she queued up every program she'd written, every file she'd copied, every piece of evidence gathered by her and Rebecca, and God knew how many others. At 11:30, she looked at herself in the mirror. The girl staring back wasn't the scared scholarship kid who'd sat in that chair a week ago. This was someone else. Someone Grandma Ethel would have recognized. A survivor. A fighter. A reckoning. The old observatory sat on Preston's highest hill, its copper dome green with age. As midnight approached, expensive cars filled the hidden parking area, alumni members arriving for their annual celebration of cruelty. Hazel watched from the tree line, counting faces she recognized from the client list. A federal judge, 2 state senators, a police commissioner, CEOs and CFOs, and all the other letters that spelled untouchable. Inside, she could see the setup through tall windows, projection screens arranged in a circle, comfortable chairs for the audience, a podium where Jackson Sterling stood, preparing his presentation. "Welcome, brothers," his voice carried through speakers they'd set up outside, "to the 131st Annual Founders' Day celebration." Applause, champagne toasts, old men celebrating young cruelty. Hazel pulled out her phone and activated the first program. Every QR code the triangle had ever created, including the 12 on her skin, suddenly had new destinations. But she wasn't done. She slipped through the service entrance Kai had told her about, moving through mechanical rooms until she reached the main floor. The celebration was in full swing. On the screens, images of victims through the decades, scarlet paint in the 60s, permanent marker in the 90s, QR codes in the modern era. This year was particularly successful, Jackson announced. 23 marks, 23 removals. Our perfect record remains intact. More applause. Hazel recognized Cooper and the other boys from the projection room. All wearing formal robes like this was some sacred ceremony instead of organized crime. But tonight, I want to share our greatest triumph. The girl who thought she could expose us, who aimed her camera where it didn't belong, who learned, like they all learn, that Preston has consequences. The screen changed. There she was, zip-tied to the chair. Jackson drawing his codes. They'd filmed it all. Of course they had. "Brothers, I present Hazel Blackwood, the poverty case who forgot her place." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Show the codes." "Patience," Jackson smiled. "Let's see what our artistic friend created for her." He pulled out his phone, aimed it at the screen showing her marked arm. The QR code registered, redirecting to not what he expected. Instead of deepfakes or humiliation, the screen filled with documents. Bank records showing the triangle's money laundering, emails planning the marking ceremonies, the entire client list with real names and crimes detailed. What the? Jackson frantically tried another code. This one led to video, but not of Hazel. It was Jackson himself, recorded by the triangle's own security system, explaining how they'd murdered Rebecca Chen, how they'd made it look like suicide, how the police commissioner in the audience had helped cover it up. The room erupted. Alumni members scrambling for exits found them locked. Hazel had jammed them from outside. Others pulled out phones, trying to delete their involvement, only to discover their accounts were already frozen. "No, no, no!" Jackson tried code after code. Each one revealed more evidence: financial fraud, sexual assault, blackmail, murder, 3 decades of crimes, all documented by the triangle's own paranoid need to have leverage on each other. And then the screens changed again. Hazel's time-lapse project began to play. But it wasn't sunrise over Preston. It was surveillance footage from the past week, sped up to show her investigation, every file she'd found, every crime she'd documented, every victim who'd been silenced. The last frame was her, looking directly at the camera, rolling up her sleeves to show the 12 QR codes. "These marks were meant to shame me," her recorded voice said, "to make me disappear like the others. But marks only have the power we give them, and I choose to make mine matter." The presentation ended with a simple message: all evidence has been forwarded to FBI, state police, and media outlets. Thank you for attending your final Founders' Day. In the chaos that followed, no one noticed the girl in the black hoodie who'd triggered it all. Hazel had one more stop to make. The projection room felt smaller the second time. She sat in that same chair, unbolted now, just furniture, and finally did what she'd avoided all week. She scanned her own codes, the ones that hadn't been changed, to see what Jackson had originally planned for her. They were exactly as cruel as expected. Deepfakes that looked impossibly real, forum posts with her personal information, images designed to destroy any future she might build. But sitting there, seeing the worst they could imagine, Hazel felt something unexpected: peace, because they'd shown her their limits. The worst they could do was lie about who she was. But she knew the truth. She was Ethel Blackwood's granddaughter. She was a survivor. She was the reason no one would sit in this chair again. She pulled out a marker, her own this time, and added one more message to the collection under the armrest. "We were never their victims. We were their reckoning. HB." Dawn was breaking when the arrests began. Hazel watched from the Science Building roof as FBI agents led Jackson Sterling away in handcuffs. His father followed, along with 47 other men who'd thought money made them untouchable. Cooper cried as they put him in the squad car. Kai, granted immunity for his cooperation, stood with Sloan McCarthy, finally free of the Triangle's leverage. Preston Preparatory Academy would close by noon. 137 years of tradition ended by one girl who refused to disappear. "You did it," Sloan said, joining her on the roof. "Rebecca would be so proud." 23 victims in 5 years, Hazel replied. "How many more before that? How many throughout Preston's history? Thousands, probably. But no more. You ended it." Hazel touched one of the QR codes on her arm. Already, laser removal consultations were being offered pro bono by doctors horrified by the story. But she wasn't sure she'd take them. "Scars remind us we survived," Grandma Ethel used to say. "Don't be too quick to erase your victories." 2 months later, Hazel Blackwood stood before a packed auditorium at the Museum of Contemporary Art. Her exhibition, Modern Marks: A Digital Reckoning, had attracted international attention. 23 portraits of Triangle victims, each incorporating their QR codes into powerful artistic statements about survival and resistance. The centerpiece was a self-portrait. Hazel facing the camera, sleeves rolled up, codes visible but no longer weapons. Behind her, the projection room chair burned in digital flames. "Art is truth," she told the audience, "even when that truth is ugly. Especially then." The exhibition raised $3.7 million, exactly what the Triangle had hoarded. Every penny went to survivors. Madison Chen approached after the talk. "I wanted you to know I'm starting a foundation in Rebecca's name for students who face institutional abuse. Would you consider being on the board?" Behind Madison stood dozens of others. Former Preston students who'd carried their marks in silence, who'd believed they were alone, who'd finally found their voices. "Yes," Hazel said simply. Later, alone in her new apartment, paid for by a full scholarship to RISD. Hazel video called Kai. He was doing better, coding apps that helped assault survivors document evidence safely. "Any regrets?" he asked. Hazel looked at her arms. The codes were fading slowly. Expensive treatments working their slow magic. But she could still see their ghosts. Probably always would. "None," she said. "Except maybe one." "What's that?" "I never got my sunrise time-lapse." Kai laughed, the first real laugh she'd heard from him. "There's always tomorrow." "Yeah," Hazel smiled. "There is." That night, she dreamed of Grandma Ethel. They were picking locks together, like when she was small. But now the locks were different, digital, complex, guarding secrets that poisoned whole institutions. "Every system can be broken," Ethel said in the dream. "You just need the right tools." "What if the system is too big, too old, too protected?" Ethel smiled. "Then you don't break it, sweetheart. You make it break itself. All you need is patience, courage, and the right pressure points." Hazel woke to her phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. "I'm a student at Dalton Academy. Something's happening here. Something like what you exposed at Preston. Can you help?" She thought of Rebecca Chen, who'd fought alone and lost, of 23 victims in 5 years, of tally marks under a chair that would never hold another scared kid. Then she thought of her grandmother, who'd escaped from straitjackets and locked boxes and every trap life set for her. "Yes," she typed back. "Tell me everything." Because the Triangle Society was gone, but the systems that created it remained. Ivy League halls still hid generational cruelty. Elite institutions still protected their own at any cost. But now they had something to fear. Not the FBI or lawsuits or public shame, those could be managed, eventually forgotten. They had to fear the marked ones, the survivors who'd learned to pick locks and rewrite codes and burn down traditions from the inside. The ones who refused to disappear. Hazel Blackwood pulled on a sleeveless shirt, her fading codes visible to the world, and got to work. The reckoning was just beginning.